So age-related muscle loss is the, I'm sorry to say, almost inevitable loss of muscle mass as you get older. As we'll see in a minute, there are some things you can do about this, but here's what you're up against. And here's what the data says, and it's not exactly a pretty picture. We lose between 3 and 8% of our muscle mass every decade after 30. And it's even worse after 50. After 50, muscles lose between 10 and 15% of their strength and their size every single year. Now notice there's a range here between 3 and 8%. That's almost a 300% difference between the least and the most, which means that there are some things that you can do to be on the side of the range where there's the least muscle loss, which is where I want to be, which is where you want to be. Now, one of those things to do is to build as big a reserve as you can in your younger years. And by the way, it's exactly the same thing with your brain. For both brain cells and muscle cells, the more you have in reserve, or begin with, the more you can afford to lose some and not have it significantly affect your functioning. That way, even with a little bit of loss every year, you'll still have plenty of functionality and you won't be sitting around in a wheelchair because you can't stand up. So start working on building muscle now, and this is just as important, work on preserving the muscle that you do have. So how do you do that? 3 things. Number 1, get enough protein. High quality protein, which in my opinion is usually found with animal foods, though some people would certainly argue differently. But wherever you get it, it's got to be high quality protein with an abundant amount of essential and non-essential amino acids. I recommend about 100 grams a day, give or take 10 to 20 grams, depending on your size. That's going to be accurate for about 95% of the population. Number 2, lift weights. Some kind of weight training, some kind of what we call resistance training is absolutely essential to building and preserving muscle. This is where the expression use it or lose it came from. They were talking about muscle. So if you don't want to be losing between 8 and 15% of your strength as you get older, you're going to have to start using those muscles right now. It does not take that much. 2 20-minute workouts, if they're hard enough, 2 20-minute workouts will do the trick. Although, of course, you could do more. And number 3, supplement with the only 2 supplements that, in my opinion, actually work for muscle building and maintenance. And that's creatine and HMB. I like the brand MyHMB because they've been making HMB the longest. They're like the godfathers of HMB, and they make a really dependable product. Now, HMB works on muscle in 2 different ways. It helps you build muscle when you work out, but it also helps you not to lose muscle. It's the only supplement I know that's been shown to do that. And it works even better with vitamin D, which is something that I recommend for just about everybody. So one thing to remember about dismal statistics, like the ones I read to you in the beginning, about average muscle loss, they're averages. And even within that average range, there's a lot of wiggle room that's going to depend on what you choose to do. So it's just like I always say about genetics. Genetics loads the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. With muscle, and with muscle health, some loss is going to be inevitable. But how much you lose has a lot to do with what you decide to do right this minute. And remember, it is never too late to train with weights. Ronald Reagan was reputed to have put on 2 pounds of muscle when he started weight training in his early 80s. So don't put it off. Muscle is the new organ of longevity, and if you want to live long and you want to live well, you need to give your muscles some nice, loving care and nurturing.